know you're an early adopter of AI, and you saw the huge potential of it before a lot of people did. What is it doing right now for you? What are you integrating that right now that sort of really excites you in the AI space?
Well, we've done a lot with AI, even before AI was cool in the last few years. I mean, just to say it, 10 years ago, we started using machine learning to improve our algorithms. So algorithms around strain and sleep and recovery and heart rate monitoring, those have all been trained using AI. I think today it's very exciting to see what large language models can do to create a conversation with your data and to be able to ask Whoop unstructured questions about your health or your performance and get really deep, insightful answers to those. That's quite a breakthrough. And what it feels like, what it's beginning to feel like, is a 24/7 coach, 24/7 trainer. And eventually, I think it'll feel like a 24/7 doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. So what kind of questions would you ask it? You'd sort of wake up in the morning. What would be your the question you'd really want to ask your Whoop via AI?
Why do I feel tired this morning? What workout should I do? Is my VO2 max increasing? I'm trying to get fitter right now because I went through a period of time of having an infant and I had surgery. So right now I'm on like a fitness kick and I'm picking my days of when to train very hard versus, rest. And so that's like a conversation I'm having with Whoop. Um, and and Whoop's giving me a lot of guidance on that I otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, even, you know, uh, if I drink alcohol tonight, how much worse is my recovery going to be tomorrow? And it's like, well, for each drink you have, it'll be 10% worse. And so then you ask yourself, well, is it worth it, having a drink at a bar with some coworkers or something, to have this worse recovery? So again, it just creates this fascinating self-awareness. And we're now about to add advanced labs, which in the US will allow people to upload past blood tests and actually do blood tests through Whoop. And this is also something we're looking to bring to the Middle East early next year. And that's going to be quite powerful as well.
Earlier, you mentioned you're on a new health kick, and as we all know, you're a pretty healthy guy, and you're always trying, whether it's ice bath, plunges, box breathing. What's the latest meditation as well? What's the sort of latest thing that you're trying out, I guess?
Well, I'm trying to increase my VO2 max. I'm interested in the health span, and health span is our quantification of not just your chronological age, but your physiological age. So based on your physiology, based on your behaviors and your habits, how old are you really? And this score has become really popular amongst Whoop members. It manifests itself in a Whoop age, and I want my Whoop age to be younger. And one of the best ways to lower it is VO2 max. And VO2 max is like how much oxygen your body can consume during intense exercise. And the higher, the better. So it demonstrates more fitness. And one of the best ways to increase VO2 max is to get your heart rate um, into heart rate zones 4 and 5, because that's very intense cardiovascular training. But the key to that training is you want to make sure you're not overdoing it, or doing it on days where your body's run down. Because if you do like a sprinting workout or something like I did this morning, you want to make sure your body is up for it, and you want to make sure you don't get injured. So that's how I've been focused on my fitness lately.
Yeah, just knowing when to push yourself and when not to, I guess. You don't do any damage, but you obviously try and get your VO2 up as well.
Yeah. I woke
I
up
wondered,
this morning, you'll appreciate this. I woke up this morning with, let's see here. Yeah, I had a recovery of 90%. So I
right.
no excuse. I went to my Barry's class and sprinted really hard during that workout.
I wanted to take back. Obviously, we know Whoop is, is worth billions, and I wanted to ask really that it was that moment when you thought this is more than just a tool for athletes. This has much wider appeal. Was it a one sort of, I guess time when you thought actually, I think we can do more with this, or you already knew to start with like athletes is, already, but this has got mass appeal.
Well, the vision for Whoop, even in the earliest days, was to go from athletes to fitness enthusiasts to general consumers to medical. So that like long arc was always on my mind even from day one. I think 2020 and COVID accelerated that transition because we realized that what we were measuring could predict COVID. And we saw that people with an elevated respiratory rate uh, were, when you had an elevated respiratory rate, it was an indicator that you had COVID-19. And so tens of thousands of members on Whoop were writing in saying that they had discovered they had COVID from their Whoop. And obviously, that's not like athlete training 101. That's a very different use case. And we built a health monitor in 2020, which would alert you if things were out of range. And that was our way of alerting people when their respiratory rate was elevated. And that feature itself became one of our most popular features. And a lot of people signed up for Whoop for much more general health purposes. And that was when we also started to lean in on development around ECG monitoring and blood pressure monitoring and some really, call it innovative technology that sits much more in the medical space than it does in the athlete space.
Yeah. And then with the athletes that obviously you know and you've worked with and you've seen their stats, what's the most surprising stat or insight you've ever seen from I guess one of the Whoop wearers that you've been talking to or seen their data? Is it Ronaldo like heart rate or just, what stood out and you're like, oh wow, that's amazing.
Well, one thing that's fascinating about Cristiano Ronaldo is how committed he is to cold plunging and sauna. I think he logged it like 340 times last year. So he
Wow.
does it literally almost every day, which shows his commitment to recovery. And it takes a lot of discipline to do that every single day. It's also cool to see how athletes respond to pressure. Patrick Mahomes, who's a professional football player in the United States and plays in the NFL, he's been MVP a number of times. He was playing in a playoff game, and it was at the end of the game, and it was the Chiefs against the Bills. It was a big AFC championship game, and his heart rate was actually higher when he was on the sidelines watching than when he got into the game and was driving the team down the field. And it was because when he was on the field, he felt like he was in control. And when he was off the field, he was nervous. So I thought that was kind of fascinating.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really
and not necessarily what you'd expect. With
yeah.
professional golfers, they show a lot of composure on the outside. But what's interesting is if you look at these big moments, even though they look relaxed, their heart rate is jacked. And so we've been able to show how, Rory McIlroy on the 18th hole hitting a 3 foot putt, to win the tournament. And you would think at this point a 3 foot putt, he's done it a million times. but his heart rate was like 130 beats per minute. And so even though these athletes look calm and perform, they still feel pressure.
Yeah, that is that's they hide it very well, the golfers. And I don't know much about NFL, but I did watch the quarterback Netflix series, and Patrick Mahomes was brilliant. He'd get whacked and just get up, and yeah, as you say, he was in control on the field because he'd been trained to do that. And off the field, his obviously heart rate and his brain was sort of in a frenzy. Now, talking about athletes and Ronaldo, I guess what did it mean to have someone like that invest, not just wear your device, but actually invest money into the company for you? How did you feel about that?
It's an amazing validation that Cristiano Ronaldo invested in Whoop, and I think it demonstrates the authenticity of the partnership. Whoop has always looked for authenticity in our partnerships. We want our ambassadors to authentically love and use the product. And in Ronaldo's case, he had worn Whoop for 2 years before we ever spoke to him. So he was just someone who bought it online and started using it. And, he fell in love with the product. And I got to meet him before we formalized a partnership. And it was a really great meeting where we got to talk about health and performance and family and I was really impressed with Cristiano, the sports scientist, someone who is really obsessed with every detail about his body and his performance. And Whoop was clearly a part of that. And so, from there we looked at how we could have a more formal partnership.
Also, I know you're a busy man. You also are a podcast host as well. Is that right?
Yes, I've hosted the Whoop podcast. We've done hundreds of them now. Yeah.
What motivates you to put yourself out there and be the host? And tough question again, who's the best person you've ever interviewed?
Well, I said let's do 10 of them and see how it goes. And that was in, I think, 2018. And here we are. We've been putting out a podcast every week since. So it's been a pretty fascinating side quest of building this company. I think the reason it works is, first of all, we have amazing guests, best athletes in the world, best doctors, researchers, CEOs, entrepreneurs. And the thread that holds them all together is that they care about health and performance in one way or another. Maybe they embody it in their own life, maybe they research it, and they're willing to talk about it. And many of them wear Whoop or are affiliated with the company somehow, or they're not affiliated, but they just like the product and they wear it. And so the podcast has become a way to tell those stories. And again, we value authenticity, and so it's a pretty authentic platform for talking about people's data and their
Who,
body. And
yeah, sorry, carry on.
yeah, and I mean, look, I've interviewed really fascinating people. I think your audience will definitely love the Cristiano Ronaldo interviews. I've done now 2 podcasts with him. And one thing that comes through is really his discipline. I think with a lot of professional athletes, you, the fan, only really see when they're competing and scoring the goal and holding the trophy. You see the bright lights moments. You don't see the cold plunge 98% of days of the year. You don't see the stretching and the supplementation and the training and the sacrifice. All those hours that he's doing that, he's not doing something else. And so I think that really comes through in the Ronaldo interviews. And it's just a powerful reminder. If you want to achieve extreme greatness, there's sacrifice that comes with it.
And I guess the way David Beckham came to the US and what he did for soccer in the US, Ronaldo's done, in Saudi and the Middle East. Have you come out this way to see him play at all and see how much people love him?
I've spent a lot of time in Riyadh over the last few years. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East over the last 10 years, and I'm half Egyptian, so I love the Middle East, and it's in my blood.
Yes, and Mo Salah perhaps would be sort of. Has he been on your podcast? Have you approached him?
I haven't had him on the podcast yet.
Who's on your hit list, living or dead? Because I know you said something about Muhammad Ali. We have liked to. Who would you love to strap on a whoop to their wrist and then have them on your podcast that you haven't yet?
Oh wow. Muhammad Ali would be amazing. I just saw Lewis Hamilton's wearing a whoop. He'd be a great interview. I'm fascinated by all of his success in Formula One. That's a good start.
Yeah. A racing car driver, at the speed they go in the corners, what do you think the data would look like wearing Lewis Hamilton wearing a whoop, going the speed he does and overtaking and the way he drives? That would make some for interesting stats. I'm sure some interesting data from his when he finishes 2 hours of driving around the track.
Yeah, I mean these drivers have amazing autonomic control, which is to say that their heart rates can be jacked, but their breathing and their mindset can keep them focused, and they're in really extremely good shape. I think that's also underestimated about F1 driving. It's not just reflexes; it's a really physically enduring experience. So it'd be cool to talk about a lot of those practices and techniques. I just saw Jay-Z is wearing a whoop.
Right.
Huge fan of his music and his career. So that'd be another fascinating interview.
So you've done well finding the right talent, finding people who are passionate about Whoop, and also the athletes as well. Which counts for a lot. Real, genuine ambassadors. Likes of Patrick Mahone, as you said, and Cristiano Ronaldo. So I guess what for the man on the street, because there's a lot of pressure now, and we talk about mental health and those sorts of issues there. I guess it's my final question, really, just that connection that we've probably made it already between the physical and what it does for your mental health. When you go for a run, when you go to the gym, the endorphins, just how much it can help people who are suffering from depression. How can we encourage people to really understand that link between the two, the ones who aren't already?
Well, there's no question in my mind that activity and exercise dramatically improves people's mood and their state of being. And that's also supported by an avalanche of peer-reviewed medical research. Exercise is one of the single most important things you can do to improve your overall mood. And for people who feel stuck, I do think finding some form of activity and movement and exercise is a massive unlock. One strategy for people who lack that is to try to find some game or sport that they like and just start learning it. And then the benefit there is, of course, you're also around other people. So whether it's jujitsu or a run club or, you know, paddle, which is a growing sport in the Middle East, just finding something that you can do that gets you moving where you're around other people just massively improves your overall uh disposition to life.